Rene Rodriguez, and I am so beyond honored for you to give me your time, your valuable time, and hop on and talk to the audience and just educate on, I could talk to you, I told you earlier, I could talk to you for an hour on hours on end about all the stuff that you bring value and what you teach. So thank you for being on the show. I am just beyond honored.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here as well. Thank you.
So I saw you about 2 years ago at the Leadership Summit in Vegas for Guild Mortgage. And it was really crazy because out of all the speakers and, books I read and everything, you stood out to me so much. And I've been trying to rack my brain because you teach so much and you educate so much. You helped me in a ton of different ways. But I'm like, what is it? And I think after researching you over the years, I love the fact that you've nailed down that you bring value. And you really emphasize, no matter whether it's a job interview, how you did something on how to get your dream job, you bring value into everything. And that's what hits me. And that's what makes me connect. It's not about what you're offering in other ways and, where you've been, where you're flying on vacation. Social media is dangerous because people do things like that. And you're like, why do I care about this? So how did you know you make value the baseline of most everything that you do?
The simple answer is the marketplace determines your value and the marketplace determines your income and the impact. I always say the marketplace is another way of saying reality. Like, go put a real estate hat on. I'm sure realtors listening to this, I've talked to clients that think their house is worth something that's astronomical. And in their mind, it's worth that. But the market says no. Well, the market is reality. And the same is true in the job search and in this pursuit of value creation and selling yourself. And you got to be able to think about what's valuable to my audience. And people make buying decisions based on their reasons, not mine. And so the process and the pursuit of value is an empathetic one of trying to understand where my end user is, who's listening, and what matters to them. And then going back and being self-reflective enough to saying, where's the intersection of what matters to them and what I'm good at? And a lot of people say, okay, here's what's trending. And they'll talk about that, but they're not good at that. And I think that's a big mistake where we say, well, let's talk about what's trending. Well, how about we talk about and figure out what we're good at? And then we look at what's trending and see where those intersect. And then we focus on that. And that intersection requires one, empathy to understand the market and other people and what their needs are, and self-awareness, understand who I am and where I'm at, where my weaknesses are, and also where my talents and strengths are. And so I think that, I think we all have a goal of wanting to have impact on the world. We have a goal of wanting to make a difference. We have a goal of knowing that when I do something that there's an effect outside of me. That's where we find our purpose, is saying, wow, I did this and look at that result. I did this and all of a sudden, look at their building wealth. All of a sudden I did this and look at their changing their life. That's what we all pursue in some way, shape or form, whether explicitly or implicitly. And so for me, the recognition of all those things was saying, okay, how do I identify what my skills are, my talents? And then how do I look at what the world needs? And I merge those two and intersect them.
And you make it sound like everybody just knows to do that. And here's the thing is in the lending industry, especially, mortgage lenders have almost along the way, and myself included, been in the business over 23 years since I went to college for 4 days. So this right out of high school, I've been in the lending industry. We've somewhere along the way been taught to be app takers. And I think we lose sight of how important it is to use active listening, be empathetic, know what value we're serving the world, not just on Saturdays or Sundays when you go to church or whatever you do on the weekends or with your family, but in your career. It's so important to know how you're serving and how you're giving value to your client. We're doing like one of the most important things that you can do other than, surgeries, brain surgery and that. And in a way, it is brain surgery, right? The lending industry is crazy getting these loans done sometimes. But I think we lose sight that we are helping people get financing for a house, that they build their dreams. I swim with my kids in my backyard and do all these things. And I think that when we become kind of like app takers, we just go, it's just a transaction. So for you to bring that into the lending industry and the way that you do is huge.
Well, I think what you're saying is that there's the app takers or order takers, right? They're taking and facilitating transactions that would have happened anyways, with or without them. Just somebody else was there at the right time. That's not selling. That's not creating value. That's facilitating value, which is important. And of course, the refi boom, it's critical because everyone is needing to do that. But now the market adjusts a little bit and people don't know how to go out and add value. The process of adding value comes to me from within the ability to uncover value that's not seen yet. So can I show somebody and move them from what's called problem unaware to problem aware? And that it only happens through presentation. That happens through active listening, like you said, empathy, a clarity and understand where is somebody at knowing what their goals are, seeing that distance between the two and saying, okay, here's how to do that. And the person that will win is the one with the most credibility in being able to do that. Maybe usually I say to you, they should have done it themselves. If you're in industry in mortgage or real estate and you don't own a home, well, how about we start there? Be your own first customer. And so that when you're sitting across from somebody, you're at a place of integrity when they're scared. Because if you're not owning one, then you're scared too, which is understandable. But feel your fear, do it anyway, so that you can actually understand the process you're putting people through every single day. And if you go through that, then you can sit across and saying, I know I was in your shoes too. And there's the empathy. And here's what I did. Here's why I did it. You will connect at such a deeper level, but you'll be of integrity at that point. And that it just everything fits in that sense.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I started doing was I created a what's a loan estimate video. And I send it out 24 hours before my client actually gets the loan disclosures. Because what we have to remember is before we get insecure and before we start freaking out because the client's calling us and saying, oh my gosh, I got this loan estimate. Or they call their realtor, my lender's charging me $18,000. I do a video that curbs that and makes them a little bit more comfortable. Like, hey, you're going to get this before you look at that line item that says 18,000 or 20,000. Remember, that's your property taxes, your insurance. Because I think we have to remember that our clients, they have money blocks. They have triggers. They have all kinds of things going on that we may not be aware of. So when we fire off those disclosures and we expect them not to be mad, it's like, well, wait a minute. We have to be empathetic, which is one thing that you're big on reminding us in the lending industry. Be empathetic and try to set the expectations. And that's been a huge shift for me in providing that value to my client, because my phone used to blow up when I get the loan estimate. The realtor would call, they said that you're charging all this money. So just that little video and firing it off and being organized and having that system and sending it to him. And I send him a video text like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Borrower, go check your email, go check your spam. But sometimes I do it in BombBomb. And it's really, really helped. But when we don't do things like that because we're just order takers or app takers, we really lose sight of what's really important, which is like making the client feel at ease, right?
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing. You're abiding by what I call the 3 Ps: predict, preempt, prevent. If you can predict that people are going to maybe have a potential issue around a certain part of the process, well, what can you do to preempt that? Well, you're doing a video, and then it prevents that surprised response, and you're preparing people for something. And the process of managing expectations is so underrated, so talked about, but very rarely ever implemented. And if you can manage expectations, like if you think you're drinking milk and it's Sprite, you'll freak out, even though you like milk and you like Sprite. But the expectation of milk and then the taste of Sprite is shocking because of the gap between expectation and reality. And so if you can manage that gap of saying, I'm expecting smooth and there was a little bump, you promised me smooth. Well, stop promising smooth. Smooth isn't the value. Getting there is. Communication is. No surprises is. And so if you're communicating and you say, look, that's why the turbulence script is such a timeless metaphor for the mortgage industry, and saying there's turbulence from time to time. And, here's the deal. You can't panic unless I do. I'm like the flight attendant. I go to turbulence all the time. I just look at the flight attendant. Are they good? I'm good. If they're panicked, then there's a problem. And don't worry, I'll be way ahead of it to make sure we don't get there. And so there's all sorts of beautiful metaphors that can help people manage that process. Oh, there's a little bump in the road. Not a big deal. Tiffany warned me about it, and I know exactly what to do. Versus she said it was smooth. Bump. What was that? What was that? They said it was smooth. No, it was a bump. Is there a problem? That's just the expectation gap.
That turbulence post I did, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, and I've used that. You're absolutely right. Saying, hey, there's going to be unexpected turbulence. But when you say, I promise you a smooth transaction, it's like you want to set yourself up for failure like no other and make everybody mad before you even get started. So those metaphors have been really, really important to me on telling my story and helping clients understand things. And somebody, Business Soul Story, I did this coaching program, and she said, what kind of shoe are you? And I was like, oh, I wanted to say Louboutin, but I'm like, I wouldn't spend money on that kind of shoe. And she said, no, that's your money block. That's not about what you're going to spend. What do you picture? I'm like, a shoe. She's like, why? I'm like, because it has red bottoms. It's unique. It's sexy. It's this, it's that. It's expensive. She's like, all right. So you're classy. You operate on a high level. You're unique. And I was like, oh my God. So I use these kinds of metaphors with my clients in telling my story. And it's so important to understand those kinds of things because it helps you connect. And you're really, really good about helping connect with the audience and your clients. And I wanted to ask you, how did you get so ingrained into the lending industry side of it? because, for Guild Mortgage to have you on stage, it was like, it was amazing. So where did that career shift come into play?
2001. It was 9/11 and the towers just crashed. A week later, we lost $1 million contract. I was doing massive scale culture change and training and consulting for a big manufacturing company. And we lost a big contract because oil prices went up and they cut training and development first. And I was there thinking, okay, I have 25 employees. We were doing 55 workshops a month, rolling, doing well. But now I got all these employees and no cash. So I had to fire 20 people in a day, which is horrible because these were close friends, felt like family. And about a week later, I called a friend of mine who was in the mortgage industry. I knew he was killing it. I knew interest rates were super low. And I said, hey, how's this mortgage thing work? Because my mentor, when I was in high school, because I asked him, he was a CEO of a big company. I said, what do I have to do to be in your shoes when I get older? And he looks at me and he says, you learn how to sell. If you learn how to sell, you'll always be employed. And so I learned how to sell. I sold cookware door to door. And then when that happened, I went back to that piece of advice. I go, maybe I need to go sell this mortgage stuff. So I asked him and he brought me in. It's kind of a funny story, actually. And I came in and I had sheet protectors with me and a highlighter. And he's like, what are you doing? I go, show me your sales order. And he's like, what do you mean sales order? I'm like, well, what do you have people fill out when you buy? He goes, oh, this? And he hands me this page with 1,003 pages. I'm like, 1,000? He goes, no, it's a 1003. I'm like, oh, because it's only 4 pages. I'm like, okay, whatever. I go, highlight what you need filled out here. And he's like, what do you mean? I go, just highlight what you need filled out. It was like 8 sections. The rest of it was there, right? It goes back to the old days. And I said, okay, I put that in a sheet protector and I grabbed a stack and I said, I'll see you tomorrow. So I went out, came back the next day with 9 filled out. And he's like, what the hell did you do? I just said, I just went to friends and family and said, if I could save you money on your mortgage, would you want to know about it? They go, yeah. You go, cool. I don't know what I'm doing, but I got a great team. I fill out these sections in yellow and they tell me yes or no. And they go, okay. And that was that was it. First one we priced out was $978,000. And he grabs it. He goes, let's price it. I go, what do you mean price it? He said, well, let's choose your interest rate. I'm like, you can choose the interest rate? I thought bankrate.com set that or something. He starts laughing. He goes, no. He walks me over to a fax machine. Remember those? And the big letter-sized or legal-sized piece of paper with all the basis points on there. My head started spinning. He had promised me an 80% commission. And he goes, all right. And I'm seeing like 2.7% or, 0.065. I'm like, what kind of percentages are these? I knew he was lying to me. And he said, well, let's price this one, $978,000 at 2.75 on the back. I'm like, the back of what? He's like, the yield spread premium. What? I have no idea what he's talking about. He goes, well, we're going to origination fee of 1%. What? I don't know what the hell you're talking about. 1% of what? What do you mean 1%? You promised me 80%. And I'm upset with him. He goes, Rene, calm down. He goes, grab your calculator. You're going to learn about basis points. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. It was $978,000. I'm like, yeah. He goes, 1% origination fee plus 2.75 yields for the premium. That's 3.75. So $978,000 times 3.75. Yeah. I did the number and he goes, 80% of that.
Yeah.
I looked at him. I said, you're going to pay me $37,000 to fill out this little sheet of paper? And he says, welcome to the mortgage industry. Now that was back in that day. So I was pulled in. This is immediately a way that I could cover my expenses. And immediately I realized I didn't want to be a loan officer, but he had 65 loan officers and none of them were selling. They were all order takers. And I looked at him. I said, why don't we train these guys how to sell? And he's like, I would love for you to do that. He knew I was a good salesperson. And I said, okay. So I spent 2 weeks and put together a curriculum. 4 people showed up and it took me 2 weeks to develop this 1 4-hour training. I took what I knew about brain research, what I knew about sales process, and I merged it. And he's like, wow, okay. And the 4 guys go, this is the best we've ever seen. Can we do it again next week? I want to bring more LOs. Did it again, killed it. They all said, man, hold on, this got even better. Can we do this with realtors? I looked at him. I'm like, let's do it. I created 27 workshops that year and all things that I had learned to become a sales pro. And 6 months into it, I did one on overcoming procrastination, which is actually an upcoming workshop that we got coming up that I still do. And the science.
Usually will be my assassination. That's on my board right there.
I love it.
Yeah.
So we talked about, how procrastination is a self-regulation issue. It's not a time management issue. And so there's a whole neuroscience and neurobiology side of it. And a guy in the back, I guess said, come up to me afterwards. He goes, you saved my life. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, well, last month you made me sign a contract to lose 25 pounds. And I did it. And he goes, I had a heart attack 2 months ago. And he goes, and I want to repay this favor to you. I'm like, I didn't do any of this. This is you. I just showed you. He goes, no, I'm repaying you this favor. I need to bring you to Los Angeles. And I want to introduce you to Tim Brahim. You need to know who Greg Frost is. You need to know Todd Duncan and Barry Habib. I'm like, I have no idea who those people are. Anyways, lo and behold, I go out there. By the way, our training programs, now we got 110 people back to back in the, standing room only in this workshop that had 4 people. And he brings me out there. Tim Brahim and I hit it off, and I helped him design his business plan in 2007 and 8. Actually, 2008. 7, I helped one of the speakers, Eric Mitchell, become the highest rated speaker there. He turned around and told everybody that was my content. And that got my name to Tim. Tim put me on stage in business plan 2008. And so my career started sort of growing from there. And so I was also a partner in that mortgage company prior to that. And so, yeah, but I still did other jobs. I was still working at Coca-Cola. I was still working at National Paper, Louisiana Pacific, Kimberly-Clark, and, all the other big companies we work with. But the mortgage industry was sort of, became very close to me.
Wow. So do you agree that if you just keep going in life, just keep peeling back the layers, picking on the blinking dashboard of life and career, you just keep pushing buttons, you're bound to just get into something and find that success and find your purpose. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think there's a little more strategy involved than just pressing buttons. But I think that, to me, it's a process of, somebody told me yesterday, it was something, and I said, life teaches, I learn, and then I move on. If you can learn from all the buttons you press, have curiosity, press the buttons. What's this do? What's that do? And then learn what's working. And then once you find something, hone in and refine it.
Yes.
Be really good at it. I was not a good speaker. I was not somebody who articulated. I was somebody who was a mumbler. I had social anxiety, still have social anxiety. I don't like being in groups. I'm an introvert. So for me, the event and the stage is great. The after party, I can't stand it. I want to go in a room, maybe a group of 3 people, or just my wife, or just a friend, and just decompress. Or after a big talk, I just go to my room and just lay on the bed for half an hour and just be there in silence, and I can recharge. Then I can come back. If I go from the event to the place, if I have had a down moment and I turn off, I'm silent for 2 hours. So that's my recharge. So for me, none of that stuff was natural for me. That's all a learned skill. But I think what you're also saying here is if you keep pushing, there's no avoiding putting time in to be good at something.
Right.
And when I interview people, I said, are you willing to devote 5 to 10 years to master your craft? And if they give me any hesitation on that, I can't work with them. The amount of time and energy it takes to do what any of us do at a masterful level, most people don't understand and aren't willing. People want fast results, and you can't, certain things you just don't, it's like somebody said, you can't force open the petals of a flower. You got to let it take its time. That's how learning is, development. That's, going through and making mistakes is all part of the journey. You got to love the mistakes. You got to love the failure. You got to love the process, because if you can get better, man, that's one I won't do again. And just accumulate those things you won't do again. And you start creating that more narrow focus of something that becomes even more and more effective. And so, but that only happens through making mistakes.
Yes.
And learning.
And I've actually learned, to your point, I've learned in big ways to sit down in front of my computer. I'm like, okay, what do I not know how to do today? What am I going to tackle? Before, it used to absolutely paralyze me. I had to write a little Post-it note. Learning is not scary. It's fun. And I had to put it on my laptop maybe 5-6 years ago, because I'd sit down to figure something out and it was literally paralyzing me. And I would stop. I would give up. But when I started going, I wonder how I'm going to figure out this today, things started to change and they started to shift. And if I failed, oh well. And I started getting less embarrassed, and I started not being as critical of myself, not as critical of others. I realized, because life sometimes is a mirror. When you're criticizing other people or you're expecting perfection, it's because that's what you want for yourself so badly. Yeah. So things just started to unfold, but it was really when I started to get over the hump of not knowing how to do something and figuring out. And if I didn't know how, I'd go pay somebody and figure out who can help me do it, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
So one of the most important things that you taught me was don't create your own story in your head. So you were speaking to us on stage, and you stopped what you were doing and you walked away. And I was like, what's he doing? Did they not pay him? It was just funny. The things that went through my head. I'm like, is he mad? Did somebody flip him off in the front row or something? What happened there? All these things went through my head. And your whole point was, what did you guys think happened there? Don't create your own story, because people are doing things for certain reasons, and you can't make that a reflection of yourself or your self-worth, or stop what you're doing, or be okay with failing and not trying harder. That was the most important piece that you helped me with my business and in relationships, with friendships. If someone doesn't call you back in 24 hours, you start thinking, oh my God, they don't like me. Maybe I didn't reach out to them enough. It was crazy. So speak to that from like a lender side, like when a client doesn't call back, when a lead goes cold or something. What can we do to not create our own story and just keep pushing and pursuing that client or her situation?
Well, I think the message is you will create your own story. The question is, what story are you creating and what source are you pulling that story from? And so like when I walk off stage abruptly, it's to really trigger people's stories. It's to trigger their perceptions. It's to trigger things. And then also to create the aha of saying, wow, I can't believe my brain just did that automatically and unintentionally and unconsciously. Because the narrative and what's happening, it's how we understand reality. And if there's a break in that, brain doesn't like a break in reality. So it has to fill it in with an assumption. But we all have different assumptions, which means we all have different sources of that assumption. Unfortunately, the world tends to lean towards a negative assumption because of this thing called negativity bias. And so when you leave gaps in the narrative, gaps in your story, gaps in people's understanding, you don't communicate, you don't fill in the blanks, people will fill in the blanks for you, and they'll do it based on their own experiences. And you can't control, and nor do you have, it's a risky thing for people to finish your story for you. And so that's why we teach the importance of communicating and over communicating and making sure you tell stories. But the most powerful piece is if you're dealing with something, that's a real lender example here would be some document doesn't happen. And it's okay. So you're at the closing table and something's wrong. Well, okay. So there's a gap in the narrative. If the buyer and the realtor have past experiences with loan officers that are negative and lazy and don't follow through and don't dot the I's and cross the T's, they're going to fill that gap with that XYZ person did it again. Man, I knew I should have known better. Or if you have built a relationship with them and they know your story, they know who you are, what you believe, their values, and you're aligned, when something goes wrong, they'll pull from your story to fill in the gap. And they'll give you the most important thing you can have in business, which is the benefit of the doubt. And so the importance of being able to tell people your story, and I think it's important to add an ounce of vulnerability in that story so that they get to really know you. And you're leading by example, because if you do that, most likely is they'll follow by doing that as well. And there's bonding that happens there when people can be vulnerable that way. And that's where real relationships are built.
Yes. And that's such a good point, because us in the lending industry, we've been taught things. We don't close on time. We don't communicate. We run from problems and all these things. And so people, just like you said, can say, oh, just another loan officer that didn't follow through. Just another agent that doesn't like to talk to us. When we call them on a Monday and we bug them and all these things, and you start filling in the gap on like really your own self-worth. And so when I found myself creating my own story before I heard you teach that, it's a huge like aha moment for me. But I would go to call a realtor, because that's what I was taught in my other coaching programs, to call 40 realtors on a Monday. And I would call and I'd already be thinking, they're not going to answer. They're going to be annoyed. They're going to be in a hurry. They're not going to want to talk to me. Well, why am I making the calls then? And I didn't know anything about providing value. It was like, well, maybe if I ask them how their kid's soccer game is, then they're going to want to talk to me. No. So when I went hard on the value and make sure I show up for them and show up for myself, things started changing like crazy.
That's awesome.
Crazy.
It's when you take ownership for what's going on and you don't blame people, it's one of the most freeing moments. And I don't handle well being around people that look to blame. I'm repelled by that idea, because I know the outcome of that. It's a miserable life. Now I'm under the control of other people. They have a remote control to my feelings, to my success. It's like, I don't care. Okay, yeah, it probably is. They were a jerk and they probably did something wrong. But what did I do to put myself in the situation in the beginning? Because that's all I can control. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I was naive to believe that they were any different. Shame on me. Thank you, life, for the good lesson. Not happening again. I move on and it's over. It's over. I'm not going to carry it over and over again. And, some people say sometimes I'm hard on myself. I'm like, I'm not. I think it's important to feel mistakes and feel failures. I think it's important when I do something wrong to feel it. If I'm out of alignment, to feel it. And that's what that feeling of an ounce of shame sometimes is okay. If I was wrong and I did something I'm ashamed of and I just pretend like it didn't happen, I didn't learn. But if I'm like, man, I'm ashamed of how I acted back then. People are like, don't beat yourself up. I'm not beating myself up. I'm actually feeling disgusted by my behavior, and I don't want to do that again. And so if I feel it, now I'm not going to go, I must be a horrible person. No, this incident was disgusting. I shouldn't have done it. And it stays within this incident. The moment it starts permeating other aspects of my life, that's where the rabbit hole begins, and it's not healthy. But if you can feel the pain about one behavioral incident and let it feel, it's like my team knows, we have a great culture. They know that when the client's around, there's no room for nicety. So we've got to deliver value immediately. And if they mess something up, I'm going to sit there and go, you feel that, don't you? I said, let's run through the end result and the impact of what you missing X, Y, and Z caused. Now we've missed this, we missed this, we missed this. And you see them, sometimes their eyes will swell. And I go, so now do you feel it? And they go, yeah. I said, how's that feel to you? And they go, not good. I go, good. Congratulations on doing it, because now you've learned the best lesson and why I hold it so dear. And trust me, I knew it had to happen for you to learn it. So high five. Now we let it go. There's no value in holding on to it. Feel it, decide who you want to be, and I'll let it go. I go, all I care is that you felt it. And they're like, oh, I said, so now let's go back to it. And I won't ever bring it up again because I already know they are dealing with it. And I go, it's the same process I've had to go through. Now, if you don't know how to offset that, it's a dangerous game to play, because a lot of people will shame them and keep them down out of a control. This is not about control. This is about growth. This is about truly building empathy and compassion and learning. And sometimes you got to feel the consequence of a stupid decision, of an oversight. I'd much rather have that person feel that decision now and make a change versus me trying to avoid conflict and make them feel okay in 6 months of them failing, only to realize that I can't keep them on board because I wasn't honest about their performance.
Yeah. And it's actually so empowering when you get out of your own, ego, and you're like, okay, I did something wrong. I felt it. It's empowering, instead of just being the victim and running from the problem, because you're going to bring your problems into the next day and the next group and the next job. So when I made that shift from victim to empowered, I was crying one day about my divorce and going crazy. And he did all this stuff. And my friend said, Tiff, stop being a victim. I'm like, but he did this to me. And okay, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that stop being a victim. Be grateful for the experience and start figuring out what lessons you learn. It's not wasted time, and start getting empowered by it. Yeah. I think my whole brain did another one of those shifts where I'm like, oh my God, I was being the victim. And I carried that advice into everything that I do, every relationship, career, moves, everything. So it's what you just said is so true. And when you can actually take a look at it and own up to the mistake and learn from it, it's empowering beyond your wildest. I'd rather hear the bad stuff so I could be better.
Absolutely. And it's not fun, but stop looking for fun and easy as the metrics for something good.
Yeah.
Not everything flows perfectly. Now, and that's okay. I don't have that expectation of easy, because it's like, if it's easy, then everyone's doing it. And I'm not doing anything unique and special. I'm not pushing myself. The gym should not be easy. It should be hard as hell. And my body then adapts to another level so that when I'm in another area of life, that moment becomes easy because I put myself through hell before.
Yes.
And if I own those moments like that, I'm much better prepared for the realities of life. And it's like, somebody said, well, if the proverbial flood comes in life, I want to be the one who built the ark. I want to be the one who spent the time and the energy to build something useful for the world. And that was sacrifice. It's discipline. It was hard, but man, how beautiful of a feeling to be there to help people when they need help. And if I was hedonistic and I just searched for what was easy the whole time, I would be of no use and no value, because building an ark is not easy. So I wouldn't have built it. But when I needed it, I didn't have anywhere to save people. So I was looking for a ride on someone else's ark instead of being able to provide it. And so you got to make a decision who you are in this world. Are you offering a ride, or are you trying to get a ride?
And I saw you say that, and I wrote it down. I have it somewhere in my notes over here from weeks ago, because it's so true. There's leaders and there's people that are looking for the ride. And thank God, somewhere along the line, I've decided to step into the role of leading, because it feels so good and it feels great to help. And it's become my purpose and my passion. Whereas before, when you're just looking for the ride or looking to be the app taker, order taker, it doesn't feel good. There's no purpose in it.
Yeah. And I would also say the piece, if you're needing a ride right now, it's okay. Lean on people, lean on your friends, lean on your family. Just don't be that person forever, right? Because it's okay to ask for help. It's a beautiful thing, because when you ask a friend for help, you're giving them a gift, because all of us listening to this, we feel great when we can help someone. And especially the one that doesn't want to ask for help and find yourself saying, this moment, I was the one asking for a ride, but damn it, I'm going to make sure I can give a ride next time. And there's a beautiful thing in being able to give and to take, because when I can help somebody, they give me a gift of being able to feel like I'm doing something. If nobody asked for help, then there wouldn't be that good feeling. And so there's times we have to ask for help, and don't be ashamed by it, but just don't be that person always, because then we call you a taker.
And you, speaking of leadership, and I know you have another event, so I want to get to what you're doing now, because I could talk to you for hours, like I told you. So you were just on Forbes. Amazing. Love it. The cover. I love how they look so classy and looked awesome. And you
was it just to clarify, it's not the actual cover. That's
I knew that.
I wish it was, but it was a design. It's when you're featured in the magazine, then people will use the logo for getting attention to read the article. That it sometimes looks like a cover.
You could have let me roll with that,
I know, but it's
just let me.
That's one of those things. When I looked at it and I talked to our design team. I'll be very honest. And I go, I told him, I said, man, he's such a good designer. I said, I think we're a little too far on the promo. I said, I think it looked too much like a cover, and
it made me think it was, but I knew that it actually wasn't. But it looked sharp. So it was awesome.
Yeah, it was very well designed. And so I go, but I just so we're putting disclaimers in, and we've got about 15 or 16 articles like that are coming out in the next few months. And I just said, I don't want to go that heavy on article feel, on cover feel. Let's use the logo. We can get props to where the article is going to be located, but let's make sure that we're in alignment here.
Oh man. Well, like I said, you could let me roll with that, but okay. So what do you have going on right now? What's your baby right now project that you want to talk about?
Ooh, there's so many babies right now.
I know that I was like, I could talk about Amplify.
We've got, there's a lot of different things. We got a mastermind that we've got that we start on May 19th. But I think, there's that, but I think that the simplest one for people to get a hold of what we're doing would be our monthly group coaching program. That's something where every single month, I get to really teach and coach on something that I think is relevant to people. We do it based on feedback, and we get this amazing group of people that come together to learn, to grow, to engage. And people are so engaged in the coaching programs. It's fantastic. And it's a group training / coaching. So I'll bring people up on the screen and they can observe coaching. And what happens when you observe someone being coached on something you need to learn, you're learning just as much. And so we call that process co-learning. We use that in the Amplify course as well. And so I'd say that, our monthly group coaching, for those that want to get started, it's only $99 a month or $9.97 for the year. We also have our Amplify course, which is sort of our flagship, experience. You get 2 days with me going through developing your story, putting that story in a context of a business value proposition, learning the congruency between what you say and how you verbalize it with your tone of voice and body language. And that right there is extremely transformative, because we start from the inside and work our way out.
Yes. I saw you saying, when I was growing up in Memphis, and you're like, you need to pause. And I'm like, so I walk around my house and like, in Memphis, pause, Tiff, because I do these 3-day live events now, virtual live events, and you're in my brain about body language and all that stuff. And you're so helpful and so impactful on me. I could watch your shorts all day on YouTube. Everything, every 20, 30 seconds you put out there is of so much value. It's mind. So I love what you're doing. I'm so grateful that you were able to share a little bit about your story. I wish we had more time, but let's do it again.
I appreciate it, Tiffany, and keep doing all the wonderful work you're doing. You're leading the way for so many different people, and your energy is fantastic. So just keep it going, keep getting the reps in, and it's fun to watch you grow as well. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Rene. See you later, everybody.